Who's over there?
So that way it's just went by, so that's just
Okay, hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, my name is Yvette, and I am Chief Medical Officer in the Trust. And welcome to this month's report out. Particularly welcome to our RPIW team from Value Stream 2, who are going to report out at the end of their week. So we're looking forward to all the report outs, but I know for some of you it might be completely new. Apologies from Julian. He has to be at an NHS improvement meeting over in Liverpool, and unfortunately it's not one that he can beam in from today. So, but that doesn't mean that we're not recording the report out and that it can't be watched, and I'm sure he will watch it next week. So we've got 3 teams reporting out today. We've got Value Stream 1, which is elective orthopaedics from Chapel Allerton, and it's their 4th RPIW 60-day report out, and I believe that Emma is here from Chapel Allerton. And unfortunately, I think due to sickness, you're on your own, Emma, today, well, but from the RPIW team. We've also got Pharma Cabs reporting out. I don't know what that one is. I'm interested to hear. And as I said, we've got Value Stream 2, which is about discharge for patients who've had prostate surgery, TURPs, or urology surgery, I think is perhaps correct for this RPIW, and they're going to be reporting out third in. So, first one will last for about 7 minutes, and the second 2 will last for about 15 minutes. So we'll reserve questions until the end for all the teams, but we can clap when we're finished. So perhaps we could ask Emma to come up and report out now on Value Stream 1.
So hello, my name is Chris. I'm KPO Specialist and I was team leader for this RPIW. The purpose of this RPIW is early mobilisation. So we know that getting a patient up early after they've had primary hip or knee surgery is very important to their recovery. This is our project form. This is how we scope the project for the week, the team members of the week, and the whys, the variation in the process that enabled us or didn't enable us to use a smooth flow process through this. This is our target progress report. I'm going to hand over to Emma.
Thank you. Okay, so we looked at summary measures for reporting out today. One of the key targets we looked at was the lead time, which is the time that the patient enters the recovery room to the time that the same patient is then transferred to the ward. Our initial baseline time was 17 hours and 16 minutes, with an aim to achieve a target of 6 hours. At day 60, we have surpassed our target with a lead time of 4 hours and 56 minutes. Of the 121 patients who fit the criteria for this study, 26 or 21% of these patients fit the criteria for being transferred to the ward. So the time of 4 hours and 56 minutes is only relevant to those 21% of the patients. At day 60, our walking distance has reduced to its target level of 152. That's primarily due to the fact we have a designated commode now on the post-op unit, so that's improved things dramatically. During last week, we have asked 20 of the primary joint replacement patients about their expectations regarding mobilisation on the day of their surgery and their expected length of stay. And the results for this have been very positive. Out of the 20 patients, 16 or 80% expected to get up on the day of their surgery, and 16 patients expected a length of stay of 3 days or less, and all patients expected to go home by 4 days. We're also, from a physio perspective, sort of reinforcing this by informing all the patients when they go to the pre-op hip and knee school that they will be expecting to get up on the day of surgery as well. Our newspaper So the newspaper, 8 out of the 11 targets have been completed, and we do feel that the rest of the targets will be achievable by the 90 days. Some of the targets are very small things that we need to sort out, things like tape. We need to get some tape for the board, the correct coloured pen. So some of them are very small, small things that we definitely can achieve. We have come across many challenges over the last 30 days, and I think primarily the first one is the fact that we really struggle to meet up as a group. It's been really difficult to try and move this work forwards because everybody has their own clinical commitments, work cross-site. Obviously it's this time of year, annual leave, a lot of people are using that up. I was presenting with a work colleague of mine this morning, but unfortunately at 10 o'clock, due to staff sickness, she wasn't able to then come and do this with me. So there have been a lot of sort of barriers to us moving forwards with it.
Okay. Excellent, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, my name is Matthew Spence. I'm a pharmacy technician. I'm also the quality improvement practitioner for MMPS, and I'm here on behalf of Jo Buck, who is the general manager for the department. Unfortunately, she can't be here today. She's a project manager of PharmaCabs. I'm the project manager of a group called Flu Clocks Are Saving, and hopefully in the coming weeks or months, I can come and present, or we can come, the team can come and present our great work to this shout out as well. So, just before we, so PharmaCabs is a lead project. Lead works in conjunction and is complementary to Leeds Improvement Method. It's a 12-month training program which has level 2 qualifications. It's split over 11 days where people can learn about quality, continuous improvement, such as 5S, PDCAs, MUDA, and visual management. So far we've had a number of projects. We've had cost of errors project, communications project, my own project, as you can see, Flu Clocks Are Saving, which I'm very proud about, and PharmaCabs. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Debbie and Cheryl, who are part of Team PharmaCabs.
Hello, my name's Debbie. I'm a pre-reg pharmacy technician, and this is Cheryl, who's PA to our clinical director. So our group is quite a mixed bunch of talents and expertise, which obviously gives us a good insight to each area within pharmacy. So between us we have 118 years experience, and we've chosen to look into our usage of taxes.
Okay, we identified as a group that the cost and usage of taxes was quite big, and we wanted to look and reduce the spend. So some of the methods that we used was the root cause analysis. We did cause and effect diagrams. We had visual management, risk assessments. We did 5 S's and 8 ways. We were then able to look into more detail into the cost, quality and delivery.
So our CSU spends over £100,000 a year on transport, which £30,000 of this is on taxes alone. The main uses of taxes within MMPS come from the transfer of medication and charts between departments and sites, out of our deliveries for EDANs and urgent medication to other sites from St James's and the LGI, along with movement of staff. And this is already on top of our pharmacy-led shuttle, which serves all our departments.
Okay, with quality we received a lot of data from our aseptics, dispensaries, MRDU and production areas. Over a 2-week period we established that 14% of the pharmacy shuttle did not actually arrive to all areas. So what we did was we looked at that, we looked at the wording and we actually rebriefed all staff. After a further 2 weeks of data, we established a drop of 7% of the shuttle actually arriving, and this is a scope then for some further improvements.
So to reduce the delivery wastage, we looked into ways to find how to enhance communication within our department to prevent double bookings of taxes. so non-value work is reduced as much as possible. We looked into SOPs to see if any changes in the way medication is picked, assembled and checked prior to transfer, to reduce any items which causes the need to rebook taxis.
Okay, so we established some root causes as shown on there. Communication was very poor between the teams. No one was checking to make sure they've been booked, so there was double taxis being booked, and they were not checking against other sites as well to make sure if there was any medication if the taxi being booked. The taxi data that we got was absolutely really difficult to audit. There were too many users booking. The stock levels we found out over the weekends and out of hours were a problem, and we need to look at that now and reevaluate. We had one example of multiple taxis. There were 3 taxis that went to Chapel Allerton with 3 drivers that went 3 different wards in a short period of time. So we need to relook at that.
So while we realise we may never be able to eliminate the use of taxis, because patients' needs will always become priority, we can dramatically cut costs and expenditure by utilising our current assets. So dispensaries are now using a designated person each day, and they're the only people who can order the taxis, and they will liaise with the other sites. The one user account will make it easier to monitor and audit. So we rewrote SOPs, created easy to follow flow diagrams, to check for alternative options with stock issues. So we also made a simplified pharmacy shuttle timetable, and we were lucky enough to have a meeting with estates for more insight into the service that we already get, and it was put forward that we could have the same driver on our shuttle each day, increasing the normality of the service that's provided for us. There was also the option for the driver to take passengers to other sites on the shuttle van rather than having to order a taxi. The times have changed to more suit each area, with additional pickups to ease logistics within the sites. So the increase of reliability has already reached 50% on the shuttle service, and the scope to improve more as the one driver is implemented. It's been a great opportunity to work with estates and has proved very beneficial, but also Chapel Allerton have agreed to become a centralised delivery point location so that the taxis don't have to go out to each ward, and these wards can pick it up direct from the pharmacy.
Okay, over the next few months we are going to be monitoring the usage and the actual cost, and hopefully with one user designated to do that we can actually look at the data a bit more efficiently. We are collaborating with estates, and we're going to be looking at the shuttle times, and we're going to keep reviewing them, especially for other departments, and hopefully we might be able to extend the times that they are available so we can cut down the use of taxis more. We are looking at possibly purchasing a pharmacy van. This can be used within weekends and out of hours, and hopefully it would also work in conjunction with other CSUs if they need to use or need to get anything over. We used a PDCA cycle, the plan, do, check and act. So we have constantly been planning, we've constantly been checking, and we're constantly reviewing. We want to get these things done right. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to involve all CSUs, and during May we are going to be doing a full presentation to the senior managers of the MMPS and estates.
So our lessons that we've learned is to empower our staff to make them feel like they can come forward if they have any improvement ideas. We need full support from management who can help cascade it down so that all staff are aware of the SOPs that are in place. So we always look towards continuous improvement to ensure that changes for demands are met, and work together within MMPS but also the CSUs to provide a more effective and also economical service. So we have better communication within our department but also trust-wide.
Amos, there you go.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to our RPIW Week in Abdominal Medicine and Surgery's RPIW Week report out. Hello, my name is Helen Gilbert. I'm the Kaizen Promotion Office lead for the Trust, and I've had the pleasure of workshop leading this RPIW this week. Our project form represents all the preparatory work that went into us learning about what's going on within our EDAN process on J43. And what we learned was, typically first thing in the morning on a ward round, a patient hears that they can go home. And I ask you to think about the impact that has on a patient. But it's unlikely that the EDAN is started until at least after 1 p.m. in the afternoon. The burden of work falls to our junior doctors and advanced nurse practitioner to balance their clinical priorities to come and support this work right across quite a large geographical location. And so typically the wait state for our patients is 189 minutes. That's 3 hours and 9 minutes since they heard the decision that they were safe to go home. Eliminating the wait state in our processes will support timely flow of patients, not only out of our organisation, but in our organisation.
Hello again, my name is Chris, I'm KPO Specialist and Team Leader for this RPIW. It's important that we measure our work so we can demonstrate improvements for our patients. This is our target progress report. So on here we have a lead time measure, which is the moment we touch the patient's notes on the ward round to the moment the EDAN is authorised. We also have a quality measure on here, which is the number of times the FY1 has to duplicate the information from operation summary onto an EDAN. We have another quality measure on there, which is the number of times we send the patient's medication home to them in a taxi after we discharge them from the hospital. Third quality measure on there is the number of EDANs that don't get authorised and the patient leaves without an EDAN at all. We've got a health and safety measure on there, which is the 5S measure, where we look at the clinical summary of the operation note. And we've got a setup reduction measure on there, which is the time we spend preparing the EDAN on the day of discharge. We've got a tap time calculation, so we're working to an average of 3 discharges a day, which gives us a tap time of 320 minutes per patient.
Hello, my name is Eileen. I'm the Senior Sister on J43 and the process owner for this RPIW focusing on the EDAN process. The current state in the process of completing EDAN has a lead time of 349 minutes. This breaks down into 5 minutes for the ward round, 189 minutes of wait time and 155 minutes from the beginning of the EDAN to validation. These significant delays are not only a poor experience for our patients, but impact on patient flow and bed management. It also has a number of variations. The patient may require no medication, simple analgesia, or need a supply of neuroregular medication. There's also a variation in the required content of the EDAN, from a few lines for a short, simple procedure taken from the up note, or a longer summary of events in a longer stay. There's also variation in the clinical decision to discharge. It may be clearly stated on the up note when to discharge, or we may need to wait for the review on the ward round. Discussion throughout this RPIW week has been the first step in a collaborative approach with input from different roles and responsibilities in the process of creating an EDAN. Standard work will allow us to begin the EDAN at the beginning of the admission, allow it to flow with the patient and be available at the point of discharge. Throughout this week we've been conscious that the EDAN is a handover of information to GP and can have a significant impact on patient safety. Currently a large number of patients leave without completion of an EDAN. The ideas generated could have an impact not only on timely discharge but patient safety.
Hello, my name's Steve. I'm clinical lead for urology and an RPIW team member. The frustrations of the inability to admit our routine elective surgical cases and indeed the hold-ups in SAU of our emergency admissions are familiar to all of us. Many hours of expensive managerial time are spent trying to free up beds. Some of this problem is created by patients fit and ready to go home but awaiting an EDAN and for prescribed medications on the EDAN to arrive. The creation of an EDAN has become an onerous administrative task for stretched FY1s, whose priorities necessarily lie with the sickest of patients on the wards and are a blocker to the smooth running of the surgical unit. The solution to the problem must lie with a change in the process of producing what are effectively two documents: a concise, accurate discharge summary document and a discharge prescription. This requires buy-in from other staff currently not involved, who must be persuaded that this investment will produce advantages to them in frustration reduction at other times. One solution will not fit all, but the basic principle of speeding up the process has to be an evolutionary production of the documents during the admission with prediction of the need for completion of these ahead of time. This means a change in the responsibility of the document content from one group of junior doctors to that of every doctor and nurse.
Right, hello, my name is Gavish. I'm one of the SHOs on urology. So as we've heard already, the EDAN is one of the main documents the patient goes home with. And I guess non-clinical staff might not really know what an EDAN is or what it consists of. So the EDAN itself is the electronic discharge advice note that patients go home with. And we thought actually to start tackling this issue, we had to really redefine what we understood by the EDAN, what we wanted it to consist of, and really break down any assumptions we already had about what it should be. So we went back to first principles, and we're aiming to change this aspect of the patient discharge paradigm from being a provider-focused one to a more customer-focused one. So we're aiming the EDAN to our GPs as a handover document, and my personal stint in general practice quite starkly highlighted the need for a very timely, accurate, relevant and very concise handover of patient, and this transfer of care document plays a vital role in it. And I think we'll hear a bit more next about
what it looks like. Actually, so here's a copy of it now. Hello, my name's Catherine and I'm a pharmacist and part of this RPIW team. And you've got here an example of an EDAN. What we realised was that there's a lot of information already out there that we're already producing, which is suitable to be transferred directly into here. What we need to do is standardise that and make it suitable for our customer, who is ultimately the GP in this case. So what we undertook at the beginning of a process of 5S'ing the operation note, which is entered into the PPM process by the surgeon who completes the surgery. And so that's the person who knows what the follow-up is necessary for the patient. So the aim was to standardise that op note so that information can be directly transferred where appropriate to the EDAN. In the initial stages, that will be carried out by either the surgeon in theatre or by a doctor or a nurse or an ANP on the ward, but ultimately we'll be looking for that to be automated once we've tested and standardised the process.
My name's Rachel, I'm one of the F1s on urology. So currently all of the discharge paperwork requires a clinician to enter all the data, and as previously mentioned, our priority is to the unwell patients in surgery. And we did some work, as you can see on the board, about the typical activities in F1 in the morning. And as you can see, we tend to be spread far across the hospital. But the priority of the nursing staff of the ward is to get patients that are well and want to go home. And what we found is that whilst we know the process of discharging a patient, the nurses actually tend to know the patients much better than we do. And this led us to think about situations in which it might be appropriate but still safe for nurses to be able to write the discharge paperwork. For patients that don't require medication, the data we've collected so far suggests that allowing nurses to write the clinical information dramatically speeds up how quickly we can get patients out of hospital. And this will help decrease the number who are discharged without paperwork. So in January, of the 89 patients discharged from 43, 26 went without the legal paperwork, the EDAN. And since it's typically the patients who don't need medication who go quickly, if the nurses were able to write the clinical information, this could dramatically reduce the number of patients who went home without it. In addition, this would also help us, the junior members of the team, by freeing up time to do either spend with patients or to do other administrative tasks like VT assessments that we often miss out because of time spent doing other tasks.
So, I know it might raise a few, my name's Michaela, I'm one of the trainee ANPs within AMS and part of the RPIW team. And I know it might raise a few eyebrows to hear that we're asking nurses to input some of this data into the clinical discharge document. So as part of this, we'd need to do some standard work and some competency frameworks just so that everybody's got that reassurance that that information going out there is going to be clinically relevant, accurate, appropriate, and meet all the criteria that is set out in our initial statements. But I think regardless of the ability to authorise an EDAN completely or so that the patient can be discharged, or if it needs medications, it's really important that nurses have some involvement in that input, because even their contribution to the clinical summary we found this week could really speed up that process and shorten that time of waiting for that final authorisation. So I think it sets that process into 3 different streams of the patients that don't need any drugs, patients who can bypass pharmacy, and patients who need further validation from pharmacy. And regardless of where we're at in that process, we can really use that help from the wider team. What it does require is a lot of emphasis on communication, we found, knowing who's doing what, for whom and when, and we came up with an idea of having a little bit of a MDT huddle with a senior ward leader, pharmacist or tech, and prescriber, just so that we know we're not crossing over roles, we're not duplicating work, and we're not making that process any longer than need be. Which brings us on to Nancy.
Hello, my name is Nancy Dickinson. I'm a junior sister on J43 and an RPIW member. In an initial review, it's identified that a wait time of 189 minutes between decision to discharge and the EDAN started to be written. Some of the causative factors for this were communication breakdowns, when nurses were not aware of the decision to discharge, or were not aware of the completion of the EDAN, or indeed pharmacy were not contacted to process the EDAN. In order to challenge this, a traffic light system for the J43 Admission Discharge Board was devised. Red, no EDAN or EDAN incomplete. Amber, pharmacy action needed. Or green, ready for discharge or pre-pack. The location of the board next to the PPM whiteboard is well placed to grab attention. Ideally, in future work, this traffic light system will translate directly to the whiteboard. Roles and responsibilities for updating this system would lie with the individual who completes the EDAN. To change red light to amber if pharmacy is needed, or green ready for discharge or pre-pack. It was recognised that pharmacy technicians or pharmacists are not always present on the ward. So as part of this, the nurse in charge would coordinate with them and let them know that action was needed. On discussion with different members of the home team, the overall opinion was quite positive, and that a visual traffic light system would be beneficial not only for the on-day EDAN processing, but also during inflow EDAN processing.
Hello, my name is Claire and I'm a ward-based pharmacy technician and an RPIW team member. This week we've looked at the importance of additional medication for long-stay patients being available on the ward before the authorisation of the discharge takes place. So we identified that there's a lack of proactive ordering between nursing staff and pharmacy staff, and that if medication is currently kept to stock on the ward, we don't order it in advance for that patient, and that means that at the end, when that patient is told that they can go home, they are then waiting for medication to arrive on the ward. After some discussions with nursing staff, it also became apparent that there is a bit of misunderstanding that those appropriately labelled medications can be used as an inpatient and at discharge. So we decided that they needed to be in-floor ordering and it needs to be used as the inpatient and given to them to go home with.
So on the final day we did some remeasures. There were 2 patients discharged on Thursday. So the lead time, which was the measure from we touched the patient's notes on the ward round to the EDAN being authorised, we had a baseline of 349 minutes. We set a target of 120 minutes. We introduced a new step to this stage and we had a nurse-led discharge on the day of discharge. So the first measure on there is the prescriber-led discharge. We eventually got that down to 260 minutes on the day of discharge, which is a 25% reduction, but there's still some work to be done there. However, the nurse-led discharge was down to 3 minutes on day of discharge and a 99% reduction. Bearing in mind this is bypassed pharmacy, no medicines required. The quality defect, so the number of times an FY1 had to duplicate the clinical summary into the EDAN. There was 2 discharges on the final day. They had to do that with one of the discharges, the nurse did it on the other discharge, so that was a 50% reduction. The quality defects for the number of medications we sent home in a taxi, obviously there was only one patient required medication on the day and they went home with medication. That's more of a long-term measure that we're going to hope to improve over the process. And the number of EDANs not authorised and sent home with the patient, again it's more of a long-term measure, but on the day of discharge there were 2 patients discharged, 2 EDANs authorised, so 0 defects on that. The 5S measure, as you can imagine, is a big task, probably the biggest 5S project we've taken on. So 5S in the clinical summary. At the moment that still stands at level 1, but there's plans in place and a lot of work to go to improve that process. And finally the setup reduction, so the time we spend preparing the EDAN on the day of discharge. So again we've got 2 processes now. There's a prescriber-led discharge, and we reduced the baseline measure for that was 155 minutes. We spend 155 minutes on the day of discharge preparing the EDAN. The prescriber on the re-measure spent 20 minutes on the final day of discharge preparing the EDAN, which was an 87% reduction. The nurse-led discharge, the time the nurse spent preparing the EDAN on the day of discharge, 3 minutes. So again, that's down to 98% reduction on that. So some great re-measures there for us.
This is our newspaper. The newspaper lists our actions needed to be completed, who is responsible, the standard work required. As a team, we are confident that these are achievable for a nurse-led discharge. We feel challenged in the 30, 60, 90-day report out that the actions for patients requiring medication input will take a bit more longer in this process.
So our key learnings, as you heard from Gavish, what is the purpose of an EDAN? And actually making sure before we start these processes we have a shared version of the reality of what some key elements of our organisational processes are. We learnt that we can do more for our patients when we not only reorganise our thinking but reorganise our work. So actually, in terms of the tasks in this process, we've not currently necessarily changed what they are, but we've absolutely changed where they're done in the process in the interests of timely discharge of our patients, and potentially who they're done by, and the fact that they're done in flow at the time that they're agreed. We've learnt by using process flow mapping that from this team here there is a really strong confidence that nurse-led discharge will be a success from Monday next week. I've talked about information systems and the 3 Ds, which are duplication, development and deletion. In terms of duplication, what we've seen a significant volume of in this process is duplication of information between the number of different systems that we use to affect this process. And at this stage, we've not been able to remove that. The team are very keen to provide structure to that process at the moment, so that effective identification of relevant information can be more quickly transferred between systems. In terms of development, we always want to leap to IT solutions before we've actually tested really what we want to do, what we require and what it should look like. So the team again, I think, realised that this week. And finally, deletion. Of concern about our organisational processes, we learned that when an EDAN is simply not authorised or validated and sits in our system, they are cleared down out of the system in order to ensure efficient working of our systems. But what we learned was that meant for those patients that electronic discharge advice notice has never got to their GP surgery. So I ask people to think about, when you are deleting things, what might be the consequence of what you're doing. The language we use, beautifully alluded to in the report out, but does you need to do the EDAN really signify the importance of that task and being patient-centred in our organisation? So I ask you to think about the way we describe things to raise or reduce the urgency of that requirement at a particular point in time. And yet again, what we've seen from our 2 sponsors, Penny and Liz, at the start of this week they set a 120-minute challenge from the decision that a patient could go home to the EDAN being authorised. And yet again, we've seen the potential of what started the week with people saying we're never going to do that, to actually showing the art of the possible. So really important for any of you in the audience who may become sponsors in the future. It is really important to set those challenging parameters to the work that people can do in a week.
So, in summary, the EDAN is not an onerous administrative task to browbeat overstretched FY1s with, simply by reorganising the process, we can bring the patient submission to a smooth end.
We've just got a few thank yous. Emma contributed on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday this week as an F1 and handed over beautifully to Rachel in terms of Rachel being able to continue that really valuable contribution to our week. So I wanted you to see who Emma was in terms of her contribution this week. And David Brettle and Sean O'Hagan. David Brettle's from Medical Illustration. He's given the Kaizen Promotion Office a radio frequency identification device. And Sean O'Hagan's the F1 who wore that RFID device for a week, bravely and boldly, to let us track him round the organisation in his day-to-day work. And it was his heat map you saw up in the up earlier in the report out. So a big thank you to Sean and David for that. Martin Portman and Pamela Forbes were on our advisory list this week. So we also include people in these weeks who we may want to go to for advice. And they were very supportive and responsive in terms of supporting us with some of that over this week. I have to say a big thank you to Angie Craig, Claire Goodman and Andy Breen, because without them, last week, we wouldn't have had a single location to run our work out of this week in terms of a meeting room. And it really is important that we're not moving these people round our organisation between meeting rooms, because these weeks are tough. They're hard work, they're challenging, and to have to cope with trying to move between locations is simply not an option when you're doing this kind of work. So thank you. Again, a big thank you to Penny and Liz, who've been bold and brave in their challenges of us this week and have maintained running interest over the course of the week, coming to talk to the team over the course of the week. And finally, the bit I always find really hard, because I'm just a softie at heart and I need to get a grip, but I've said these weeks are tough. To my doctor, pharmacy and nursing colleagues in the audience, these people here are a credit to your profession in terms of their natural ability to listen, to understand each other, care about each other's work and collaborate on a great solution for our patients. So thank you.
I just wanted to say a few words. Hello, my name is Penny McSorley. I'm Head of Nursing for Abdominal Medicine and Surgery. I'd just like to thank the team that took part in the RPIW this week. I think the work that they've done has been fantastic. The idea of the Leeds Improvement Method is change done by people in the clinical area that understand this, that do it every day, and this team look after EDANs every day. I think it was really good to see multidisciplinary team working and to break down those assumptions and barriers that we had about EDAN, and that what is the purpose and whose responsibility is it to do it. I must say I was nervous as a sponsor when I heard nurse-led discharge. I kind of thought, oh my goodness, another thing that's going to end up in the realms of the nursing role. But actually what we've proved is if you get the information flow right from theatre through to ward, through to discharge, that actual end process of nurse-led can be 3 minutes if that information follows the patient through. On the first day when we started, I set them a sponsor challenge, and Liz and I did 120 minutes. And I also talked about a patient story. I read lots of lovely complimentary letters from patients and their journey through surgery, but there's often a but, and the but is always at the end around discharge. But on the day of discharge, I waited 4 hours, your pharmacy processes are this, and so we hear that coming through. And I suppose another challenge I set to the team was, we're thinking about value in terms of what the value is to the patient, but I also asked them to think about the next patient that's coming along, because to get patients out quicker and smoother allows the next patient to come in much more easier. And that patient is either on SAU, they're in crit care, they're being dealt with by PCAL, or they're somewhere in a clinic somewhere, and they don't often come to our ward till later on into the evening until our bed's available. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody.
And I'd like to follow that up as well. My name is Liz Mellor and I'm from Pharmacy. The struggle for the team was keeping Penny and myself away, because by the first day we could feel the energy in the room and the ideas coming forward. It became very clear as we heard the discussion day on day, and you've heard today, that our understanding of what an EDAN actually is needs challenging, and whose responsibility the EDAN is also probably needs a wider challenge across the organisation. We also wanted to reflect that not only have the team come up with lots of ideas, but those ideas have freed up time that is currently used in the system and could be viewed as waste. And so we see a great potential, and are really quite enthusiastic about the next 30 days. Thank you.
And I guess finally from me in relation to AMS is that I'm the exec sponsor for Value Stream 2, and actually when Helen was mentioning to me about the EDAN and who should do it, this was on Monday, I said, oh, but it's always been a doctor's job. I'm really nervous, Helen, about you saying it needs to be somebody else's job. So I think that you've done a fantastic piece of work. I suspect that nurses spend more than 3 minutes chasing junior doctors to do the EDAN. So actually, if you can do it in 3 minutes and feel less stressed, then that will be a big bonus. So I suppose the next 30 days will really tell. But I'd like to thank all of our teams today because each report out was fantastic, and I'm sure that people have got questions for you. So would you mind coming back out to the front, or you can all come out. Emma has Emma had to go?
She has.
All right, well Chris, you come, and then let's see if we've got some questions. And actually, it may be that you're a team member, but you've got a question for somebody else.
I was looking at her.
And I don't know whether this is... I don't know whether it's purely coincidence or whether the KPO team thought, oh, let's put farmer cabs alongside EDAN. But how much you link together. And actually, every Friday morning, we some of us meet from the quality team to talk about serious things that have gone wrong during the week. And actually, Dawn mentioned, she just disappeared. Well, Dawn mentioned that this week we've had a taxi deliver some discharged drugs to the wrong house. And actually there were some controlled drugs within that package. So the work that you've all done around getting drugs done and discharge TTOs done and ready for the patient to take with them is so important, as is early mobilisation. So, because it's all part of discharge.
It is.
All part. So, has anybody got any questions for the team? Come on, you must have. Claire.
So I think the EDAN work is fantastic. So I'm Claire Goodman, I'm General Manager for Critical Care. Anything that means your patients are discharged earlier means that the critical care patients flow better, so we're really supportive. We're doing our value stream, and we've also identified EDAN with neuroscience as being something we want to look at. Do you think, I know you're just looking at it in terms of urology at the moment, but do you think it's something that we will be able to spread in the organisation, or do you think it needs to be a local solution for individual ward areas?
I work across all areas of AMS, and I think it's not one thing that can be specified to one speciality. I think we can do it in all areas with the right support and the right training given. There's no reason why it can't, really.
So we're really going to be watching you.
There's probably some sharing of principles that we could do, and that for you to then create your own local
apply,
solutions, I think, definitely.
And is it fair to say that you were doing your discharge, your EDAN, using PPM plus as opposed to Blue Spear.
Yes, absolutely.
So
yes.
I think it's probably important to say that there could be differences. So I don't think there's going to be any edict from the trust that says right suddenly we're going to get all nurses to do EDANs. I think it has to be worked through, doesn't it? Who was the artist?
Steve?
I thought that was fantastic, as every doctor and nurse. Okay.
He emerged with that this morning, it was his inspiration last night.
Fantastic. Okay. Any other questions?
Can I just ask for just an opinion on what did the involvement in both the pharma cabs and the RPIWs make you think differently about? Because there's quite a lot of different words being used. We talked a lot about language. Just wondered if it made you think differently.
So much. I'm wondering how I could nail something. I think there's something about how we've learned as an MDT about each other's roles and the impact each of us has on each other. And I think that listening and understanding of one another, and we've come out with some opportunities for sharing what we do and maybe adapting what we do separately to kind of bring the whole thing together.
I've only been a consultant here for 21 years. I had no idea we had bypass labs on the ward. absolutely no idea.
Yes.
I mean, there's lots of things that you have that work on the ward. You'd ask for something to happen, and you have no idea what actually goes on in the background. Much more respect for what other people do.
And even the pharmacy team and I were talking, weren't we, about we'd made assumptions that we knew what was going on. But actually, when Claire and the team went out, it wasn't what you
it's
thought.
open that dialogue to actually say this is what we need from you and that's what you need from us, and we've all put the input in to come up with the solution. It's not just prescriber led or pharmacy led. It's a bit of all of us.
I mean, the pharma cabs work. Did you think that you had really good stock levels? What were the surprises that you came across?
I think the duplication of work. As I said, I wasn't a member of the team, but I filtered in and got a lot of information from pharma cabs. But the duplication of work and the reordering of taxes, the amount of taxes that we actually use when there is a pharmacy shuttle service available, and trying to involve other members of the team to think differently, think about using the pharmacy shuttle first, and if they're thinking taxi, we need to use a taxi, the patient needs it first. Obviously, sometimes the patient will need that medicine very urgently, and that's when we will use a taxi, but at the moment we encourage staff to use the pharmacy shuttle.
Yeah, we didn't realise on how many levels it actually was. We just thought, oh yeah, it's taxis and this is what it's spent on, but it's so many different. It was like you go one way and then that shoots you off in another way and another, and it would just sort of cascaded all the way along. So there's lots of different little changes that need addressing, which will change the bigger picture as well.
To touch on what Catherine was saying earlier about the spread of the team, pharma cabs were lucky to have somebody from estates part of the group. So we had somebody called Simon Gallagher, who can't be here today, and his input was instrumental in understanding what goes into how they can help us improve the service and improve their transport networks and utilise their transport network.
We wouldn't have had any idea of how other methods like getting out of our shuttles for weekends and evenings. We would have never have thought about that without having the input from estates.
Okay. And any other questions? Suzanne and then Tim.
Can I just ask Chris, what has the patient's reaction been to the pathway of mobilising the data?
On speaking to some of the patients, and also there's almost the unintended benefit of patients that are now being streamed straight through to the ward essentially, and whereas before they would have spent the night in post-op unit with monitors and machines and might not have got as good a night of sleep, actually their initial feedback has been by just being in a quieter environment, it's helped them feel fresher in the morning to continue their recovery and rehab. So it's been really positive so far. The fact that there's a lot more in terms of expectations, so there's been a big shift in terms of how many expected to get up on day zero essentially, has also led to kind of what's my plan for full recovery, and I think there's further work to do with that, so that then day by day each patient is well prepped on what they're expected to achieve.
Okay. Tim?
So sort of on a similar line really, for the AMS team, we learned in RPIW1 going into RPIW2 that changing the pathway for the patient had some unintended consequences of needing to prepare the patient for a slightly different journey. You know, lengthy decisions from discharge to actually going home are well known in the community. Are we going to sort of think about, as part of the next 30 days, how we're going to make sure that the patients are ready to go home sooner? I mean, I don't want to do you out of the job, send them all to the discharge lounge, but if we're going to get patients home before lunchtime, they need to know that they're going to be going home before lunchtime and have families ready, lifts prepared, etc., etc.
We kind of do that, especially in neurology and J43. The kind of patients we have, even when we're picking up from theatre, we say, "Oh, you can go home later on." You know, it's much probably, you know, "Hello, my name is Eileen. Oh, you've done really well." On the way back down in the lift, oh, it says you can go home later on. Have you got somebody picking you up?
Right.
We're already putting that in the mind, much probably even before they even hit the ward. You know, so I
think the huddles that were mentioned will be really helpful in forward planning, and so that once we know we're on the ball, we can then communicate with the patients and say, right, we're aiming for this tomorrow, have a plan in place with the patients as well. And I suppose we didn't mention that in the conversation, but I know I talked about it a lot in the week that whilst I've been on 42 and I've had chats with Becky and Brooke about what's going on, I found that really helpful to plan my workload and what I should do, and thought we could transfer it, and patients are then more prepared as well, and the nurses know what we're doing, so we just work a bit more cohesively.
I think the other thing as well, just to finish that one off, is you'll recall from that RPIW there was an action on the newspaper to go and review the patient information that's available. A very similar action exists on the newspaper to go and re-look at patient information, look at how we're setting patients up, and any of the benefits that have come out of this work. In the interests of continuous improvement, we need to be continually improving our communication to patients, so it is captured on the newspaper, Tim.
Can I ask Rachel and Gavish about what would you say to other junior doctors if they were asked to be a member of an RPIW week?
I think for me, I wasn't quite. I'm surprised by how much I can actually see coming out of it. No offence meant, but I wasn't sure how much of it would be talking and how much of it would actually be action. But a lot of the stuff we're doing, we see how it's going to be put into place. We planned how we're actually going to move forward, and it's a lot more positive than I would have expected coming into it.
Yeah. And I agree with what you said. Essentially, it gives us a different point of view as well. So knowing what the other members of the teams do, and that will be different for each of the projects, does change how I will be starting my EDANs in the future and how I'll be disseminating that kind of information. So it's a tough week and quite tricky in terms of training time and trying to give as much as you can into the week, but definitely worth it.
Good. And Eileen and Steve, you've done 2 RPIWs. So was it easier the second time around?
No, this was
No, I think this was more challenging. We had some challenging debates. I think the TERP was a bit easier because it was actually physically, we could actually go and do something like, and we could see the results. But this one's, it's been trialling it. We could trial the TERP a little bit more than we could. This has been a lot of talk on what we can do in the future.
The problem for me was that surgery, I understand, EDANs are a dark art.
Well, yeah, but you've shone some light on them now. And pharmacabs, your team members, again, you must have had your eyes opened and seen it working differently. So
as admin, we don't usually book taxis, so
it was an eye-opener, and realising what really people do in the department, it was very interesting.
Yeah, I think again as well, we wasn't too sure how we could make an effect, you know, and then as we got further into it, it became more apparent. We just got more eager for it, and everyone was just bouncing ideas off, oh, this works in our area and this works in our area. So you do have to kind of iron out teething problems with some things, but it was definitely rewarding for us, you know, on our side, being able to implement and see that change. That was probably the best part about it.
That's fantastic, thank you. We're nearly at the end of Report Out now. We've got some certificates to give out to the AMS team who were team members, and it's a certificate of participation in the RPIW. So, Girish and Eileen, Rachel, Steve, Nancy, and Michaela. Thank you. Catherine. Thank you. Claire. And Emma is
doing advanced life support.
Doing advanced life support. So can we give you all a final clap? And I just want to say this week I was talking to somebody. It was a bit of an interview situation, and they were asked what would be the Leeds Way value that you most identify with. And this person said, well, I want to say fair, because actually that's one of my own really strong values. He said, but actually I'm going to say empowered, because what I see now in my workplace is so many more of our staff feeling empowered. And it made me feel quite emotional, just as you all did today. But it really is great to see all our staff empowered, working together in a multidisciplinary way to improve things for our patients and hopefully make the lives of our staff easier as well. So thank you all very much indeed.